Good. All right, we are live. Good evening, everybody. This is Patrick Millikin from the Poison Pen Bookstore, obviously, for you online. And it is a real treat to welcome Duane Swierczynski back to the Poison Pen.
Thank you.
He's going to be talking about his really remarkable new book, California Bear, which resonates on so many levels. And I'm really delighted to welcome Jen Johans here as a special guest. She's a film critic and does a popular video podcast.
Audio. Nobody needs to watch me play with my hands.
Oh, called Watch with Jen.
Yes.
And so we'll just be tag teaming on the interview here. There's so much to talk about, but we'll need you to use the mic just for the people watching.
Yes.
So Jen, why don't you kick it off, and then I'll jump in as needed.
Well, first, thank you so much for doing this. Last time, I think we bonded over French fries with Megan Abbott over at Hotel Valley Ho, and we had a blast talking about crime books and our favorite authors. And I was just honored that Duane wanted to do this. I loved California Bear. He's been one of my Twitter followers for a long time. We have similar taste in movies.
Yeah.
And
Podcast fan. Huge fan. Yeah.
Thank you. And so this was really cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for, being here. My idea for, I hate reading from my own work out loud. I'm awful at it. I want to edit it as I read it. So I thought it'd be much safer to do it in conversation with kind of events. And it's been great so far. I can lean on my much smarter friends to, carry the weight of these things. So thank you.
Of course. So how are you doing? How has the book tour been so far?
It's been like, honestly, it's been like, this is your life, Duane Swierczynski. It's like I was back in the East Coast for a few events, and that's where I grew up. And a lot of, friends from high school, grade school, college, all walks, parts of my life. I thought, wow, if I die right now, it'll be a nice way to go. Seeing all the, people I've met over the years, I didn't die. I'm here, actually. So that's a good thing. Yeah, it's been fun. Although weird weather has sort of traveled with me. There was the first snowstorm in Philadelphia in like 2 years when I was in town.
Wow.
That was awesome. It rained like crazy here driving in. I thought the desert was kind of safe from rain, but nope. I was in Palm Springs last night. I had to jump over a little river to meet my friend. Yeah, it was a little weird.
And last time you had the biggest haboob
That's
in
right.
our history was,
Oh, wow.
right?
So I'm bad luck for any events, just so you know. Something will happen.
Well, we're glad you made it safely, for sure. Hotels, stories. Our friend Megan Abbott runs something on her social media, which is every hotel is a haunted hotel, because she's convinced, I think she's right, that, murders might have happened, stuff has happened in hotels. So any weird stories, or you're staying in some good spots?
Actually, in Palm Springs, I stayed at a place, the Movie Colony Hotel. I'm sure that's haunted. It was a weird, it's been around since the 30s, I guess, and old Hollywood stars would come out there and escape, the studios and crash here. So it's the most absurd room. It was like 2 floors. It was much more space than I needed. But I was like, yeah, I had some weird dreams last night for sure. I think dreams are indication of a place being haunted. So
Sure.
So I've had a lot of those. I won't even get into them because I don't want to be psychoanalyzed. But yeah, weird dreams in the old hotels. Yeah.
Thanks for asking that question.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen.
Well, this is your first solo book in several years.
Yes.
It is a terrific blend of SoCal noir, detective fiction, true crime, and also the intensely personal. And you achieve all of that with humor and heart. So talk to me about California Bear, how you conceived it, and what it was like to write.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit of a story. Basically, I spent 2018 every day waking up and doing a new idea. I thought I should do an idea a day in this journal. And one idea cropped up in March was I read a piece in the LA Times about a retired cop who decided to spend his retirement freeing wrongfully convicted felons. So I thought, that's kind of a cool idea. And there's one story where he freed this guy, been in prison for I want to say 30 years. I thought, what was their first beer like after that? We're hanging out. How cool was that, right? Because I'm also mentally disturbed. I thought, what if the guy leans over and says, guess what? I did it. What happens then? So that to me is a little story germ. A month later, I went to a book launch of this great, the Michelle McNamara's book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, about, the Golden State Killer. And I went to an event in L.A., Patton Oswalt, his widower, was there to launch the book, which I thought was, incredibly brave and strong. I couldn't fathom how doing that, But also, he talked about how when cops chase killers, the language they use is very romantic, oddly. It's like, ooh, he's the one. You know, ooh, I like him for this. It's a weird, like, you know, get really into this. So this intimacy with a killer was interesting. So I tucked that away in my head. Now is the sad part of the story. A month later, a month to the day after that, our daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. That was a big shock. But you know, we rallied and we thought, you know, we're gonna actually we'll trade days in the hospital with her, you know, make sure she's never alone. And for me, my escape from anything that's sort of weird is to write. Honestly, I've always written my way out of everything. So I decided, okay, in the hospital, in the quiet moments, I'm going to start writing a comedic mystery about an ex-cop and an ex-con who decide to blackmail an ex-serial killer. Sounds like fun, right? Hilarious. You know, that's a sitcom premise. But for me, it was a great escape. And I worked on it, you know, over the summer in bits and pieces, just to keep my mind elsewhere, you know. And the story I kind of populated with places that Evie and I had gone to when we first moved to LA. She and I drove out ahead of my wife and son to find a place to live, and we stayed by the beach. So all these places we stayed, all these happy memories in the book, they pop up in the book. That's where we stayed. I kind of want to, like, you know, go back to those happy memories. So sad ending. I mean, we lost her day before Halloween that year, and I honestly thought, well, I'll never finish that book. I wasn't sure I could finish any book. My brain just kind of went blank. I didn't know if I would do this anymore. The more time went on, though, I realized that writing, again, has always saved me. So I wanted to resume the book, not just to finish the book, but also be back in touch with her, you know, oddly enough. So it should be her character, her spirit became, you know, this character in the book. So I tell people it's a comedic novel about grief. I'm not sure how that lands with people exactly, but it's the truth. This is my, you know, it's been my sort of strange therapy, but also a strange way of being back in touch with, you know, a really special person who I was lucky enough to, you know, be the parent of.
Yes, absolutely.
Long-winded answer. Apologize.
No, I'm glad that you did. And when he sent me California Bear, he sent a bookmark in Evelyn's honor, the Evelyn Swierczynski Foundation.
Oh.
The Evelyn Swierczynski Foundation, #Team Evie. It's a nonprofit that you and your wife set up.
Yeah.
And do you want to tell them about that?
Oh,
Because
absolutely,
it's
yeah.
wonderful.
I mean, in the hospital, one great thing that this is Children's Hospital Los Angeles had a great program called Literally Healing, and they kind of wheel this cart of books by every day for the patients. They get a free book every day, a new book, which sounds awesome, you know. And Evie loved that. She was a big reader. She loved that. So when we lost her, we thought, you know, wow, we'd love to support that program because I think it would, you know, it did a lot of great, you know, good, and I think she would be behind that. I really wish that, you know, of course we wish she were here, but also to run the book drive we run every year because she's much better than we are at it, so and much more organized. But yeah, every year we do a book drive, and folks from all over, you know, I think some of you have donated. I know some of you have donated, and it's kind of wonderful, you know. And every year it expands. And we bring more and more boxes of books to Children's Hospital and, you know, raise money to buy more books. So it's something that, you know, means a lot to us and our family. So, yeah, it's a way of finding something positive and something not so positive.
Yes. And you mentioned favorite California settings when you drove out with Evelyn. Mm-hmm. And that is something I love about the book. I've been to LA 3 times in the last couple of years. I'm going to make him take me to the beach, I think, him and Meredith next time for sure. And so one thing that was cool was I noticed you giving a shout out to my favorite bookstore that I've been to so far in LA, which is the Iliad Bookshop in Burbank. So what are some of your other favorite places in LA, the ones you wanted to, you know, immortalize?
A great question. I mean, LA is full of bizarre places. When Evie and I came out to LA to move, her one rule was like, okay, I want to stay at the beach, Dad, a couple days. I'm like, done, we'll do it. So I went online to find, you know, the weirdest Airbnb possible near the beach, you know, that also wasn't like, you know, going to bankrupt me because we were moving. So we found this great place called Patrick's Roadhouse. Have you guys heard of this by chance? If you drive down the Pacific Coast Highway,
a real place, huh?
Right? It's a real place. Oh yeah.
You describe it like it was designed by a 5-year-old, like a shoebox. I forget how you put it.
It is. It's this like this sort of 2-story green structure. It's actually named after an actor, Patrick Fischler, who I know from Mulholland Drive. He's the guy who walks out of the diner and gets scared to death by the something behind the dumpster, right? I mean, he's been in Mad Men. Evie knew him from shows she watched. So it's named after, oddly, Patrick Fischler. So this place is so great. I mean, I think a lot of celebrities do hang out there. It's a little quiet, weird, on the way to Malibu kind of place. Arnold Schwarzenegger has a throne there. I'm not kidding. It's like, for the Man of Iron. It's like he's in there so much that he has his own throne, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
It looks like a garage sale gone wrong inside. It really does. But it's great food, and it was in Happy Memories. It's a bizarre place. Iliad's a great, bookstore. Someone pointed out to me that actually the book is full of food references, which I must have been hungry while I was writing it, because I didn't remember that being a conscious choice. I just thought, L.A.
Donuts have a key role in
So
this.
many donuts. Yeah.
There's some donuts involved. I won't say why they're involved, but just, for folks who haven't read it, not to spoil things.
Amazing donut twist, I'm saying. Yes.
Don't order the bear
Pretty
claw.
satisfying.
No, thank you. I'm glad. So yeah, places like that. I've been in LA for about almost 8 years, and I'm still very much a tourist, I think, trying to learn. It's a huge place. It's a huge place to sort of take in and process, and I finally feel I've been there long enough to feel confident to write about it. It takes a while.
Yeah. Of course, well, true crime plays a part in this, and serial killers. What is your level of interest and knowledge? Why do you think readers are drawn to it, mystery fans? Have you ever wanted to solve a case? Is this like, are you going to figure out, you're going to do a Zodiac thing? Is that what we're getting?
That's a good question. Yeah, of course, you'd love to solve a case, right? I mean, everyone wants to solve a cold case. That's fun. Actually, I'm working on something now that it's not a cold case. I know who did it. It's more the why done it part of it that fascinates me. I have a long story short. My grandfather had a cousin who was a cop in Philadelphia, a guy named Joseph Swierczynski, last name. 100 years ago, he was gunned down by a gangster outside of a bar in South Philly. And that was just like, wow. I had no idea until only a few years ago this happened. I looked into it, and the gangster who killed him, this is horrible to say, but I kind of like him. He's cool. He's just an amazing, colorful character. Like, he's the Joe Pesci of 1920s mob Philadelphia. And the more I look into it, the more I thought, wow, this guy's fascinating. It's a great untold mob story, but it's also a way of I'll be honest, when we lost Evie, I kind of was looking to grab onto anything. And one thing I grabbed onto was the family tree. Almost like, okay, we came from somewhere for a reason. I was looking for these existential answers, right, to questions you can't answer. But the family tree for me was like a way into, it grounded me. And through that tree, I found, this branch of the family I didn't really know about very well. The cop who was killed. And this gangster who entered his life and ended it. So I'm working on it's true crime, it's memoir. Again, I know who did it, but to me it's like what was going on at the time that how these two people collide in such a fatal way. So that to me, that's the why. That's what fascinates me about true crime. The why. I'm not sure about you guys. I mean, you read true crime? Are you into it? And
Love it.
yeah. I mean, what's the appeal? What do you ever think about why we're so weird and sick that we?
I hesitate to psychoanalyze myself. I don't know if I'd like what I
Come on, Pat.
found. But no,
It's a safe space.
it's a safe. That's right. We're among friends. L.A. in particular has this sort of tradition. L.A. itself, as you know, is such a weird, apocalyptic in many ways landscape, and from Manson on to all these kind of roaming serial killers that were in L.A. in the 70s and into the 80s.
Yeah.
It is endlessly fascinating.
It
Yeah.
is. It is.
I remember, when I was just a little tyke, we lived in Los Angeles, and the Manson stuff was, I was
Wow.
like 2 years old or whatever. But,
Yeah.
just those creepy details about how during the trial, all of his creepy followers would be outside, and whenever Charlie did something, they all did it. When he shaved his head, they shaved their head. They put the X in their forehead, but L.A. is just, and there's also that whole kind of occult underbelly of L.A.
Oh yeah. Oh
and and cult. All this kind of interesting elements, murder, sex, the occult. All
Yeah.
this shit comes.
Yeah. L.A., I mean, what's that great Shane Black line about how in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang where it says someone took the country and shook it by the East Coast and all the weird people fell down to California, basically, and the normal people hung on in the East Coast. So I'm not sure that's true entirely, but it makes a lot of sense. I think people who do venture out west, have something to prove, something to discover about themselves, something to, figure out. I don't know. myself included. I'm one of those weirdos who loves California and loves the culture of it, not the cult of it, the culture. I think. But yeah, Jen, you're also a true crime-ish fan, maybe?
I'm actually not
Not
a big
okay.
true crime fan. I'm like one of the only women my age who doesn't go to sleep watching Law and Order. I know
Awesome.
so many women that are like, yeah, SVU, man, that's how I go to bed. And
Yeah.
I'm like, seriously?
That's
no,
good.
yeah. But I do love the idea of making sense because so much in life doesn't make sense. And I think
Yeah.
that might be the appeal is trying to figure things out. Or you see it on the news and you're like, well, why did they do that? Well, I'm going to figure that out for sure. I think that might be.
Yeah, the why done it, honestly
Yeah.
really fascinates me the most. Even in fiction, it's more the why done it, not so much the who done it's. It's parlor games. It's fun. It's a puzzle. But I love the writers who bring characters to life and you watch them. What makes them tick. That's to me is like okay, you can really feel someone, the wheels turning in their brain. That's to me the cool experience
For sure.
with a novel.
Well, you're a big reader, so for fans of your work who are curious to what to read next, that
Okay.
kind of thing, types of books and authors that inspired you. I know we talked about you were bringing books with you on the road.
Yeah.
Elmore Leonard, who is my favorite. I actually got yelled at in high school by my creative writing teacher who didn't understand why I was wasting my time on Elmore Leonard. And I
Wow.
know, yeah, she's like always praising me for my dialogue. And I'm like, this is the guy right there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So who would you recommend? I love the blend of humor that you bring to very serious things. So who do you recommend?
Yeah,
for
thank
us?
you for that because I do look to for me what draws me to any writer is their voice like that. If you do complex things like humor and seriousness at the same time, or sort of dark comedy is my sweet spot. I mean, I love Don Winslow does that I think pretty brilliantly. Charlie Houston. He has a new one coming out, by the way. Mr. Houston, new novel this spring, I believe. So, I know whenever you read a book, it's like I remember, it's almost like catching a cold. It's like, oh my God, I want more of this. If I want, I need more of this disease in me. This sort of weird voice. I go back to also. I looked for sort of unheralded writers who've been big at one point but are forgotten. One of the most powerful books I've been talking about recently is Newton Thornburg. You ever hear of that writer? He wrote the most famous
Cutter
book is
and Bone.
Cutter and Bone, Cutter's Way, starring Jeff Bridges and John Hurd. He wrote a book though called To Die in California. It's the most powerful book about grief I've ever read. It's a revenge story, kind of. It's a Midwest farmer. His son goes off to Santa Barbara and dies in mysterious circumstances, and he goes out, fish out of water to figure it out. But again, it's like just the way he describes this father, and it's genuine. It feels real. It's not like hokey. It's not like, Liam Neeson in Taken. I'm gonna find you and I'll hurt you. That's not the point of the book. It's much more complex and sad in a weird way. So that I'm trying to bring that back into print if I can. It's out there. You can find it on ebooks. But I think certain writers you sort of have their moment and they're kind of forgotten unless we talk about them. And that's I think part of our mission as dorks to talk about these forgotten writers.
Yes. And your background, I think, is really fascinating. You love books, you loved writing, but tell us about your first career.
My first career, hitman, you mean? Oh no, music. You're saying, right? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Oh geez, that's right. We did discuss this, didn't we?
Yes.
Oh, of course it's going to come up. My father played in a bar band, and when I was 10, he needed a keyboard player, so he taught me some chord changes. So I found myself in these dive bars with an neighborhood called K&A in Philadelphia. I know Jeannie knows where K&A is. K&A is like basically where Rocky was filmed, like those trash fires under the L. That's kind of Kensington and Allegheny. That's kind of the rough neighborhood, and it was a rough neighborhood, let me tell you. And I learned a lot as a 10-year-old, playing in those bars, eyes wide open. And I think being around adults from a young age definitely warped me. Those kind of adults, you kind of just watching things. I was very much a curious kid, so. Growing up in like bars like that was weird. Yeah, I was like a Catholic schoolboy by day and a barroom piano player by night, which is a bizarre. I don't think I really appreciate how much that warped me until I talk about it.
I love that so much because when I was 16, I was in bars a lot
Whoa.
as I was a ringer for movie trivia. And
Okay.
so there was barroom movie trivia. I was friends with a bunch of local reporters who were a couple of years older than me, grew up friends with my brothers. And so they would call. This was the 90s. So they didn't have cell phones. They would go over to this payphone by the bathroom. And on Friday nights, they would call and ask me random questions. My dad's like, "Who is calling you? It sounds like they're from a bar." And so I told him who it was. He said, "I don't think they're going to card you. They don't card girls. Go." So I went.
That's
and
cool.
I made more money that summer doing like bar trivia, like posing as the girlfriend of whoever was in the group.
Wow.
At age
That's
16?
Amazing.
Yes.
Really?
So that set the seed, huh, for what was
I know.
So by 16, you already had amassed this body of film knowledge already.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what I'm saying is I love that
Yeah.
idea. Yes. And the one who got me in the most is now a Catholic priest. So I'm saying there's something about this Catholic
Oh, yeah.
thing going on.
There's seriously, yeah.
Overlap.
Yeah, I mean, my first pieces of fiction, funny you bring this up, I was, in 8th grade, I would write, you know how teachers assign you spelling words, like use this word in a sentence. So that seemed boring to me. So I would write a little short story, a little horror story involving these 20 vocabulary words about an axe murderer. And my teacher was a Salesian nun, a sister. And instead of being horrified and calling for The Exorcist, she actually encouraged me, like, "Oh, do that again next week. Let's see the next chapter." I wrote like 8 or 9 chapters of these things. And amazing it was amazing, actually. I'm going to own this one. It was amazing having someone encourage you at a young age to, like, do this kind of thing. I remember by the end of the series, I wrote, I gave a little pop quiz to my teacher saying, "Okay, should this killer go free, escape, be arrested and serve time in prison, or C, be executed by the police in a brutal shootout?" And guess what she chose? Guess what option?
See,
C, of course.
you did like a choose your own adventure.
I kind of did, yeah. And
You sent her to confession, right?
Yes. And the funny thing is, this teacher, she left the sisterhood. Not my fault. I'm telling you, that's not I didn't do that. I think but we're friends on Facebook, and she may be watching. Hi, Sister Marianne. Anyway,
I love that.
anyway, we'll see.
Patrick, were you in bars when you were a teenager? Should we?
Yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah.
A little bit. It was just a phase, though.
Yeah.
No, a little
Just a
bit.
phase.
Yeah,
These were
we'd like
phases.
to go see live music a lot, and so I would do that.
Yeah.
Go see Duane.
Yeah, go see Duane. Now, it's funny you mentioned the music because I wasn't aware of that, and now I'm seeing more parallels with Jack.
For
and
sure.
Let's talk about some of the players in this book, our ensemble,
Yeah.
which is a really
Happy to.
didn't you think, Jen, a wonderful kind of group of oddballs and misfits.
Thank you. I mean, there's, I guess there's 5 main characters. There's, of course, the California Bear, who's our serial killer. He's always fun to write. And then Jack is like there's a father and daughter dynamic. And Jack, he's a former piano player. That's a jazz player. And that was my thing. I played in my high school jazz band. That's how I met my wife. Playing in a jazz band. So that was always music.
What
was
did she play?
She was our chaperone. She showed us around. Yeah. We toured like the state. I was in Philadelphia. She was in Wilkes-Barre, like near Scranton, upstate. So it was an exotic trip to go from Philadelphia to, like, wow, we're out in the sticks.
You married your chaperone?
Kinda,
There's
yeah.
a story there.
Well, we
Very
were pen
interesting.
pals for years before that happened. So it was all very innocent. It was very innocent. But yeah, it was jazz. Like, that to me is the coolest job you can have, a jazz piano player. So that's Jack's background. His daughter Matilda, I think inherited some of his weirdness, and she's known as the girl detective, and she's kind of 14 going on 50 as far as her sleuthing skills, and again inspired by my daughter. I kind of want to channel her spirit a bit. And then there's a former cop named Hightower, who is one of my favorite kind of characters to write because they're just a glorious fuck up. They're just chaos. They're chaos in human form. And they're so much fun. People ask me why the 5 characters, only 4 of them have viewpoints, in the book. I never go into Hightower's brain because I don't want to go near it. I'm not sure what's in there, and I'm afraid of it. So
That's right. There's no scene-
Hightower
Oh, good.
thing. Because again, he's a chaos personified, and they're fun to write. Those kind of characters. So
Very unpleasant person. in a
he
lot
thinks
of
he's a
ways.
laugh. That's the thing. He thinks he's
yeah.
great.
Not a lot of self-awareness with Hightower.
No.
Oh, strip clubs after the Children's Hospital. I mean,
Also real, by the way. There's a strip club 2 blocks from Children's Hospital. In case you're there, want to. Wow.
Yeah.
Check it out.
No, they're never far. Yeah.
So yeah.
As far as California goes, he just wrote a really cool article for Crime Reads on California Hangout movies, which might be the topic of our podcast,
That'd be great.
an episode that we're going to do. So I, of course, am a huge movie fan. We like a lot of the same stuff, but why don't you recommend a playlist of great movies that might have either inspired this or just some of your faves?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote this essay called, I call it the California, it's LA hang film. And by hang film, it's like you want to hang out with the characters more than like follow the plot necessarily. The plot's there, it's in the background, it's fun, but it's more like just interesting people. My favorite one of the bunch was a movie called Cisco Pike. You ever see Cisco Pike, anybody? It's okay, yeah, of course you have. You're a ringer. Of course you've seen all these. But it stars Chris Christopherson, one of his earliest roles, if not his first film role, maybe. He plays like a former musician. Again, this is my catnip, who was busted by Gene Hackman for dealing pot. And after Christopherson's out of prison, Gene Hackman's character comes into a lot of pot he wants to sell, and he makes his former guys. I'll go back and hang out with Christopherson and the gang in '72, right? I mean, that's just me. I probably should do something else important in history, but that's what I would do.
And in the credits, it's H.D. Stanton.
Oh, that's right.
I love
That's
that
kind of
so
great.
much. Yeah, it's kind of like Larry Fishburne when you see one of those old credits.
Yes.
I know who that is.
He was in MASH, wasn't he? Larry Fishburne?
Apocalypse Now he was in. You thinking of, he's in MASH too? Larry Fishburne? Oh my God, I had no idea.
Look at,
We stumped
you
Jen?
just beat us at trivia. I love this.
Damn, okay. Wow, yeah. But Cisco Pike also has Karen Black, the lovely Karen Black. She's awesome. But Gene Hackman, I'm a huge Hackman fan. I watch Gene Hackman in anything.
Yep.
I mean, that's just, he's
Night
God.
Moves.
Night Moves. Another one from the list. Night Moves.
Yeah.
Glorious.
Post-coital fondue. I mean, who doesn't love that? Yeah.
Exactly. And I keep thinking that's like, wow, that's Webster's mom having fondue with Gene. Remember Webster? That show? It's like that's her. It's Webster's mom having fondue with Gene Hackman in the '70s. As one does. Yeah. So I mean, it all started when I was not living in California, not living in LA. I want to have a cheap vacation. So the best cheap vacation is a movie or a book. So that's kind of how this list. I've been gathering these films for years, and it was fun to write about. And that inspired this book because it is not. I mean, it's not a proper hang film. There's a plot taken away, but I had a lot of fun hanging with the characters, watching them bounce off each other and see, to me, the dynamic of Jack and Hightower, to me, is interesting because imagine someone like does you a huge, like saves your life, pulls you out from a disaster, and you're indebted to this person. What if that person's an asshole? You're kind of stuck, right? I mean, what do you do? That's kind of a fun thing. You can't quite push them away, but you have to have, but it's that weird push and pull, and that stuff, again, fascinates me.
I got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Why did Jack cop to it when he got out of prison? Why did he admit to Hightower, I did it? What?
Good question. I think deep down he's an honest guy. He didn't want it hanging over his head that like he didn't want to lie to this person who had saved him, even though this guy's chaos.
And he's going to use it against him, of course.
Yeah, I guess it's just this confession of the soul. Like I have to unburden myself of this. I mean, he wants very badly to be with his daughter, but he also doesn't want to lie about it. So yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that's the first person to ask that, why he felt compelled to tell the truth. But
And I also like the detail about how, I think it was the uncle, there's some fun little digs about about Hollywood, and the uncle bought a bunch of classic novels, Agatha Christie and Conan Doyle, because they were in the public domain, or he was thinking they would, and he was going to steal the story for a screenplay or something. Those details really rang true.
Well, every kind of like villain or weird character, it's a piece of me, honestly. I mean, the guy's name is Lewis. My middle name is Lewis. That's a dig at me. It's we're like poking fun of the worst tendencies of myself. Like that's me in that book. So that's I always do that. I mean, I think characters ultimately are the writer. You have to give them a little piece of your DNA somehow. And then the bad guys, or the odd characters, are the parts of yourself that you wish didn't exist, perhaps, but might as well write about them, and deal with them.
Are you a pantser or a plotter? And my question is the Nutter Butters. Like, were you putting that seed in there right away, or did you know why you were bringing it up, and then later, or is it just a happy accident?
Well, I don't want to spoil things, but
No.
but it was happy accident. I mean, I kind of wanted the the whole opening chapter is you're following this killer around his garage, basically, and he's craving a sugar fix, and I always thought that we watch these true crime shows, and you see like years later, the killer's like, an anonymous suburban nobody. And I thought, what a weird juxtaposition between like the everyday suburban details with the horrific things they've done. Like that to me was like just fascinating, like or horrific, So the cookie thing, I love Nutter Butters, honestly. So that was, me probably hungry for one and that. But it did, again, food was like writers are the last to know why we're writing certain things. I'm serious. Like those themes like kind of bubble up, and was one of them. Yeah. As far as pantser versus plotter, I've done both. This was definitely by the seat of my, I was writing in a hospital room, just winging it and seeing where it would take me. I had a vague idea about where it would kind of go, but not really. And I ended up, it took some interesting turns for me, and that's fun when I can sort of follow, wow, this is interesting. And I sort of had the back half of the book plotted to a certain degree, and then I realized, wait, if I have this one thing happen in the middle, I have to get rid of all of that, all the work I've done. But you know what? It'll be worth it. And to me, it was worth it. I will happily toss almost entire book away if I have a better idea, which is not smart commercially. That's not a wise move on my part, but yeah.
I can't remember which author it was that said they love to write themselves into a jam.
Yes.
And then you have to just think to yourself, well, how do I get out of that one? And boy, does he write himself into a jam in the middle of this thing. I did not see the twists coming. There are several twists coming.
Thank you.
It's very brilliant. Going back to the Nutter Butter, because how can we not? I love this idea that, he's a serial killer, but his whole thing is, good God, I hope my wife doesn't know how many cookies I'm eating out of this thing because I hid them.
Right.
And it's which I think.
And then he's like, what if I poison the Nutter Butter and kill the wife who thinks she? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Something you said actually just sparked something. Oh wait, what was it? Before the Nutter Butters, you had something. You said that.
Writing yourself in.
Oh yeah, that. I mean, actually, honestly, my if I have a secret sauce technique, I want to live there, writing myself into corners. That's the most exciting, because if I know what's going to happen, so will the reader, I think. If it's too too pat. If I think in a situation where I really don't know how to get out of it, that is my sweet spot. I love that. That is like, I'm honestly happiest when I'm like, oh God, I just screwed myself. What now? Because you're forced to invent. You're forced to really think creatively. Every book I try to do something where I don't do something. For instance, I had one book where I said, all right, no guns. Guns are, every mystery novel has gun in it. How about no guns? What do you do then? One book was no profanity, which is really fucking hard, let me tell you.
Which book was that?
that was, I think it was Severance Package, because it was like in the office setting. I thought no one really curses in the office, or my imagination was like they wouldn't curse, because of the corporate environment. I think that was that one. Some of the, thank you. I've always given myself sort of like creative handcuffs just to keep it interesting. Like, hey, what do you do? Like, you've always leaned on this. Oh, Wheelman was about, what if the lead character couldn't talk? Because I love dialogue.
That was so great.
Well, thank you. I was like, what do you do? I mean, it forces you to show your character through other, learn about them through other ways, behavior, action, not, I love dialogue. Dialogue is awesome. Elmer Leonard is a master dialogue. I mean, that's the most fun thing to write. So what if you can't do it? That's fun.
Matilda Queen. What a great name.
Thank you.
We were talking before we got started, and I was just expressing my admiration for me, the magic of the book is clearly the scenes with Matilda and her father, and just what an incredible spirit she is on the page. She's really funny. She's wise, and she's often the adult, the only adult in the room, So just beautiful job.
No, thank you. I really can't take credit for her, because really I just channeled my daughter, honestly. She was that funny, that smart, that weird, I mean, she, I walk in the hospital and say, hey, Padre, what's up? We had this thing,
Was that was the father and the daughter?
Oh, yeah. She's always, that's why it's dedicated to the daughter. It was always that, we had a banter thing, and it's that, she's the daughter. I only have one, so that's,
Can you speak also to the whole citizen sleuth phenomenon? That all these amateur sleuths, who are in some ways helping, some ways,
to me, it's like it's double-edged sword. the more minds on something, the better to catch somebody. I mean, that's kind of cool. But then again, it can be the dark side of that is when some people decide facts add up and they don't really do that in real life. And they go after somebody who's not guilty of a horrible crime. So it's like that crowd, and social media has a wonderful, it can be wonderful and powerful, but it can also be hard and hellish because if you decide someone's today's bad guy, that makes your life hell. All of a sudden, like, oh, we decide you're the bad guy today. And it's, whoa, it's just, the old villagers with torches and pitchforks, mentality. That's hard. So again, everything has the potential to be great or really awful. And
Like
that's
the Cecil, did you see the Cecil Hotel
yes.
documentary?
Yeah.
And they ruined that poor Mexican death metal guy.
Yeah.
You really
yeah.
felt sorry for him.
Oh yeah, great documentary. In fact, I was on. People quoted in that documentary was Kim and Richard, who do this great tour called Esoteric. It's a great literary true crime tour of L.A. If you're in LA, take that tour. They do a bunch of them, all throughout the year. They're great. And they did a deep dive into Hotel Cecil, years ago on a bus tour. It's fascinating, Well, actually, I like their approach. This is, Kim Cooper and Richard Schaaf. They do Esoteric. They'll do a Black Dahlia, for instance, tour, which everyone knows the Black Dahlia story. They don't dwell on they'll tell what happened. It's horrible. But they also focus on the victim as a real life person, a human being. And that's their viewpoint, not the lurid details. They want to teach out Elizabeth Short. That was her name. Here's what her hopes were. Here's why she was doing what she did. And it's like after a while, it becomes all the more tragic because this is a human being that we're talking about, not
Not a fetish.
not
object.
exactly, not a true crime totem of depraved maniacs. That to me is how I like to approach true crime. If or at least it feels better to do that. I don't know.
That's my issue with true crime is I think, it's usually dead women. And so it's how do you walk that line and honor the person for sure.
Yeah.
But Duane, you brought up Wheelman, and I have to say that you have the most badass bio in this book.
Do I?
It says a receipt for this here's a stick-up. Duane's nonfiction book on American bank robbery was found in the getaway car of a San Francisco bandit who'd hit at least 30 California banks. So how can we get this book? I got to track this one
That
down
is
now.
true.
That's
Actually,
amazing.
That's due for a reprint. I did this it was I wrote it pretty fast. It was one of those quickie books like A History of American Bank Robbery. It was so much fun. And that actually led to the Wheelman in the novel. I mean, I wrote an introduction to this a collection of famous bank robbers, their techniques. It was just great fun to research. But the introduction, I thought, okay, what can I do? I decided to case my own bank in downtown Philadelphia. And I had a really good plan too. It was good. This getaway plan was awesome. And I thought either I'm going to do it or I'm going to write about it. So I chose to do it, and no one caught me. No, I wrote about it. I wrote that's the plot of Wheelman, this getaway. Always, I guess I don't appreciate how much nonfiction, the real world influences what I do. It's almost like it's vital for me. I can't just make something up, thin air. It always a location, a real story, real people. That's for me. It's the building blocks of what I do.
Was Al Nussbaum part of that book?
Yes. Oh, yeah. In fact, Al, a writer, Al Nussbaum was.
Nussbaum and Dan J. Marlowe.
Yeah, we're writing partners. I met Al's. I'm friends with Al's daughter, Allison. Yeah, I met her years ago at a BoucherCon. So I think she'd read what I'd written about her father. And we just started talking. Fascinating. I do love that. The whole story about Al Nussbaum and Dan Marlowe was a longtime mystery novelist. Wrote an amazing book called The Name of the Game is Death. This really great, bank robbery book.
Starts in Phoenix.
Starts in Phoenix. That's right. That's right. I knew I liked it for a reason. It was, so it's this great book. Dan, though, had a weird, tragic life where at one point, I think he had a stroke and lost his memory, or something happened.
He had amnesia.
Amnesia.
Forgot his whole
Forgot
career.
Everything. And his buddy, and in fact, and Al, it's a long story, but long story short, Al was an active bank robber. I think he actually called Dan Marlowe for tips or something. Almost like he read the book, Name of the Game is Death, was a fan, and they were talking a little bit. So years later, Al's out of prison. He becomes pals in real life with Dan. They're in this sort of crash pad in Encino, really in LA somewhere. And Dan's helping Al become a writer. Dan loses his memory. Al takes care of Dan, and kind of nurses him through all this. It's a great story. It would have been a great Walter Matthau, Jack Lemmon movie back in the day. I don't know who would play who, but it's a great buddy writer story, which you don't really see very often. Anyway, rabbit holes. I apologize. That's way off topic, but this is where my brain goes, right? This is kind of what you say something. It's like, oh, I'm chasing a rabbit down the, you know.
How about Jean Genie, which is a wonderful name, the Jean Genie.
Well, my friend. Well, you know, I did. My friend from college, we met freshman year in 1989. My friend Jeannie's here in the audience, lives nearby. Yeah, that was. I mean, I think I chose that name in honor of you, of course, but also, no, the Bowie song, you know, Jean Genie. It's just sort of that. It was a kind of a catchy thing, and I wanted to have Hightower some redemption. He had to have a cool wife, you know. Actually, the whole plot of this thing is it starts out as you think it's a buddy comedy, like a buddy cop thing, you know, two knuckleheads trying to do something. And the quirky characters, always the side characters, like, oh, the smart kid, the brainy genealogist. I wanted the book to sort of progress, and it flips, whereas those quirky side characters are the main heroes. And the two dipshits who we met originally, they're not the heroes. They're just like, they're the comic relief, essentially, kind of. Hightower at least is. So I try to play against type whenever I can, and just pervert the usual.
Familial DNA is such a huge thing in
Yes.
crime investigations now.
Yeah, kind of scary. Yeah, that you really can't hide anymore.
Yeah.
Bummer.
And I love that obviously it's named after Jeannie, and we have a mutual friend named Jed Ayers, who I know is watching.
Yes.
Hello, Jed.
Hey, Jed.
And Duane wrote Jed into a book.
You pointed that out. That's right.
Yeah, Jed just all of a sudden texted me like, I am immortalized. And this amazing passage about, and you said you put him through quite a ringer. So my question is, has anyone in your family or circle of friends been like, you used my name wrong?
I just now I did a book with James Patterson called Lion and Lamb, came out last summer, and I used the name of a high school buddy, and who's actually is a cop in real life. I just name checked him, and oh, there it is. And Facebook messaged me the other day and saying, "You gave me a demotion. What's the deal, man?" Like, he was joking about it, and I think he's joking about it. Sorry, Brian, if you weren't joking about it. But I do, I like to use friends, or I collect names. So if you have an interesting or quirky name, I will take it and use it someplace, and hopefully I get permission before I use your name if you're a scumbag or something, or off the charts. I have had to clear up a few things with people. There's a character. This character in this book who's a really sweet guy. He's a former librarian. His friends decided to give him a retirement present, and he asked me would I name a character after him. Like, happily, a librarian, sure. And I had to say, David, I'm going to warn you, by the way, this guy, not a good guy. So you cool with that? Like, he's like, go for it. I don't care. Some people love it. They don't care what you do to them. So I try to ask permission for the really egregious cases. So avoid me as a friend if you don't want to be, immortalized.
Isn't that a writer thing, though? If you meet a writer, you're going to end up in their books, like a conversation you have. Yeah, I mean, famously, John Cassavetes, like Jenna Rollins, anything I said wound up in a script. He would record her just talking on the phone. So you're not that far, but
I don't do that, but yeah.
No,
yeah.
but it's it's a little bit of a it's a writer thing.
You also, it's give and take. I have a good friend, Scottish writer Alan Guthrie. I've been in his books in very unflattering ways. Things that but it's from love, so I forgive him. It's okay.
Well, should we open it up to some questions
sounds
from
very
you
good to me.
guys?
Yeah.
I was afraid this would happen. Christina.
Please.
Can you think and share what you've learned about yourself, either as a person or as a writer, over the years? Like, how are you different maybe today than when you started?
Yeah, the question is, it's how am I different as a writer? And that's a great question because that's what I'm thinking about a lot. I mean, I've had between books, it's been 7 years, and a lot's happened in those 7 years. I think I'm a very different writer. I'm still me. I think the essentials are important. They're still there, but I'm definitely interested in different things. I think I did an event the other night when a friend of mine said, your books were like a giddy 12-year-old. You're writing like, oh, this would be fun, cool. Now I'm more of a wise and seasoned 14-year-old, I think, writing these books. I think I pay attention more to and I care more about character, and how people's brains tick now. Whereas before I was more interested in putting people through the worst days of their lives. Now it's more, actually, the secret of this book is I won't say what it is because it spoils things, but like I kind of avoid something that most books do, and that to me was out of a I don't know. I mean, my maturity. I don't know. I don't want so much carnage. You know, I'm on a carnage diet. I think we've had enough carnage. I think we want, a little bit of peace. So, have I changed? Yeah, for sure. And I think as you get older, you learn your skill set too. And things you feel comfortable doing. I want to push past those things and try to do things I can't do very well. Makes sense at all? I don't know. I'm always trying to challenge myself and write a different book every time. I never want to write the same book over and over again. So, yeah. Well, thank you for the question. Jeannie.
Carnage.
Yes.
I'm sure the group would love to hear about the story inspired by St. Catherine's fire drills.
Oh, God. Okay, well, in our college dorm room, we used to have, it's just like 3-story, classic college dorm. And some Weisenheimers used to like pull the fire alarm, like at, 2 in the morning, right? This happens all the time. So after a while, it happened all the time, so I decided to write a short story. No one can figure who did it. So I wrote a short story where basically it's a revenge story where the floor figures out who did it. They get them really drunk, and then they set them on fire. And my science is wonky here because I think if you drink a lot, you're not really flammable more than you are. Otherwise, I thought you were, Oh, that's right. They did it was a whole thing. I had some murky, I just made shit up. But I actually taped it to my dorm room door. And I was hoping that the people who were doing it would read it and feel really bad about themselves, and fear me. So I still have that story in my files. And when I peeled it off the door, some of the paint is still on the story. And it's edition of 1, the story. It's never seen the light of day. And it's awful. So that's not going to be printed anytime soon. But yeah.
That's amazing. I was reading an interview with you recently where it said kind of the impetus for you to write in your 20s was you had written a story for your friend's birthday.
Yeah.
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 I want to talk about that.
It was actually high school. Actually, it was for his birthday. I was high school. I wrote a story because I had no money. I was broke. I had no money to buy a gift. So I decided I'll write him a horror story and with a twist ending. And the good friend that I am, I made him read it in front of me the next day on his birthday. So this poor guy, sitting there, wants to just hang out and enjoy his birthday. No, he's reading my stupid story. But by the end of it, he reached the twist ending. He went, oh, it hit him. It got him. And that feeling was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to do that to people all the time.
What was the story like?
It was about basically a latchkey kid who's chased by demonic teenagers, and it's nothing. And I was very much inspired by very much The Lost Boys and very much Stephen King's Sometimes They Come Back. Like that's very much, whatever I was reading at the time and gorging on, it spat out my brain into a story that was original. I mean, we all do that, right? We all eat these things and absorb them, and we learn our own passions. Yeah, we just shamelessly steal and write these stories and hope they work. Yeah.
It seems to me that there's a connection between this book and Canary and Revolver, even with these really strong female kind of leads.
Yeah, that's. Oh, thank you, Jeannie. Props. I call this one those 3 books my daughter trilogy because it is Canary is inspired by Evie. I imagined her I wrote it when she was 10, and I thought, well, she's in college and she was forced to become a CI for some dumb reason. How would she respond to it? And so that became like, okay, what if game. Revolver, I imagine sort of a character like her in her 20s, kind of a burnout, like trying to figure her shit out, and what would it be like to sort of solve a family mystery? So that was again, and this obviously is her. So it's like, yeah, it is like 3 daughters. My dream is someday to actually have those 3 different characters team up in a book called like Daughters or something. I don't know, or Badass Daughters. A better title to come. But I thought it'd be fun to have those 3 very different characters team up, and
Could you see a YA Matilda Queen girl detective?
I don't think so, because you know what? I don't think she's YA. I think she's already in an adult world, right? I think that would bore her. I think. No offense to you. I just think YA is great. It's just she's already in the adult world. She's like again 15 going on 50 in her brain.
You're also a very prolific comic book writer. How do you approach comic book writing differently than prose writing? Regular prose?
Great question. Mike asked about how about comic book writing, how it's different from prose fiction. I've learned that in comics, I am not the center of attention. The artist is the star. Like, you know, I liken it to like the artist, comic book artists are Prince. I'm Dr. Funk in the back, you know, playing keyboards. No one notices Dr. Funk. They know it's Prince because Prince is awesome. You know, so the artist, you know, so your scripts are in service of really cool art and visual storytelling, you know. And yeah, there's dialogue. You're telling a story, but I had to learn to sort of write visually. More importantly, kind of translate what was in my head to an artist, and hopefully they get excited by that and then bring their own stuff to it. Like, you don't want to, for me at least, I don't want to over-explain or under-explain, over-describe or under-describe. It's like you want to, you know, give enough to go on what they, you know, they see what you're thinking of, and then they can take it and, you know, be a co-writer, be a co-creator in that way. So that was, it took a while to learn that, how to do that, you know, how to really talk to an artist. And I think as a result, my prose became a little more visually oriented. I try to think about, you know, camera angles in a weird way, or just, you know, describing things simply but effectively, you know, the telling detail. You know, that's the elusive thing. I know Elmer Leonard's famous for saying about, you know, don't describe the weather, and he's right, but sometimes the weather's cool. Sometimes the weather sets a stage, and it's atmospheric, and, you know, weather affects us all, like the goddamn rain that been this few days. So, yeah. So, yeah, it really worked kind of, it was inspirational. And I mean, hope was that, like, comics fans would find the mystery novels, the crime novels, and vice versa. I'm not sure that happens. I don't know. Some people are just swear off, you know, comics. They can't do them, and vice versa. Some people don't want to read books, you know, or prose novels. So the hope was that I think the spectrum for me actually is like there's as far as like reader interaction. Let's say, you know, movies, it's like the most passive for reader. You can wash over you. You can watch, you know, a grindhouse movie. It's just happening. You absorb it. You know, a comic is like a weird middle ground where you're actually bringing yourself to that. The things between panels, the reader is animating it themselves. It's like you're kind of creating a movie in your mind. With prose, you're doing a lot more of the work. You know, the reader is actually kind of almost a collaborator. These little weird symbols on a page come to life in your brain, and if it's done well, you see a movie or you see something going on. So that's how I sort of see the spectrum.
How does that market work? I mean, because it is kind of know nothing about it.
Comics?
And, yeah, both of you guys can weigh in. I mean, yeah, are you coming up with original ideas, or are you hired by, you know, write me a new story featuring this world or this character?
When I first started, I wrote for Marvel, so it was their characters, and like, hey, give us a Wolverine story, you know, and like, well, what kind of story? He's Wolverine. Tell a story about. It's like this. Go do it, you know, and push them, you know, push the characters to the limits. Recently, I've done actually more creator-owned stuff. I'm working for Storm King Comics, which is Sandy King Carpenter. Her husband's John Carpenter. It's their comics company. So I've done you know, recently like an original graphic novel I just wrote last year for them. And that was all, you know, came to no existing characters, just a fun murder mystery I thought they'd get a kick out of, you know. And it's really fun writing for someone who you want to make them laugh, or, you know, or if you actually make John Carpenter laugh, that makes my day. It's like, or make him like go, oh, that's not bad, you know. He's a hard critic. He's seen it all. He's done it all. So, and Sandy, she's even tougher, I think. It's really great to have that kind of feedback of like, oh yeah, go for that. That's kind of cool. That encouragement. Again, it's the 8th grade nun effect, right? If you encourage me, I'll keep writing this shit. So,
what are you working on now? What do you have going? Any TV stuff, by the way?
Possibly. I can't. We had the writer's strike last year, so it's like I'm dying. There's news-ish. I can't say it right now because that's like, you know, that's not.
That always sounds so cool.
I know.
All the authors. Well, I do have something, but I can't really discuss it right now.
No, but that sounds, yeah, that's pretty awful, isn't it? When writers do that. But no, I'm working on the nonfiction book I mentioned. That's been a long-term project. I started writing last year a crime novel in a notebook, in a legal pad, longhand, just to like, you know, tune out the noise of social media, online, everything. Just like, and it was really liberating to be like, you know, just me, a pen, and see where it goes by the seat of my pants. That's been fun.
Did you finish it, or are you still working?
It's still working on it. Yeah, I'm still working on it. I write slow, as it turns out.
Are you one of those people who writes every day, or do you give yourself a break? Do you have
I try to, you know, like being on tour is I'm not written every day because it's just, you know, traveling and things. But I'm always, I count thinking as work. I really do. I'm always thinking about, you know, fitting things together, and so any dull hours, I'm never really not working. Mm-hmm. It's a curse.
Job requirement, though.
It is, yeah. Yes.
So you said you were started writing by hand. Were you taking an intentional break from social media during that time?
No, it's funny. I'm not sure. I can't remember why I decided to do it. Like it was, I do actually. The story kind of partly involves a journal, so I thought I'll just do it longhand and see where it goes, and see if it kind of capture the rhythms of writing in a journal. And it kind of took over then. And I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. So it wasn't a social media break, but I think after a while, like you're tempted to, like, you know, when you're writing something on a computer, oh, that piece of research, I'll jump online, and an hour later you're like you've just wasted, you know, an hour looking at obscure articles about nonsense. So that was a nice break from that part of it.
You must have good handwriting.
Oh no, it's atrocious. I am terrified that I'm actually going to try to decipher this someday and think, what the hell is this? What did I write? You know, I don't. It's not good. It's atrophied over the years. So I think I can read it, but
Most of us can type a lot faster than we can write
Yeah.
longhand. So do you find yourself kind of thinking a little bit differently?
oh yeah, it forces you to slow down. I mean, as you hear, I speak like Martin Scorsese on crack. My brain goes, you know, a mile a minute, but writing longhand forces you to really just, you know, be deliberate with every word choice, you know. And I try not to. I hate scribbling out words. So I'm like, do I mean that there? Yeah, and it flows very different. Clive Barker, one of my idols, he writes everything longhand. I was lucky enough to actually visit his house once years ago, and one of his assistants pulled out, you know, those giant Rubbermaid tubs you would store, like, you know, decorations in. Pulled out this giant tub, cracked the lid. It was full of handwritten pages of, like, stories, maybe even books that had not been released yet. A treasure trove.
Wow.
I wanted to live in that bin and just read, but it was all longhand. I was blown away by that. Yeah,
That's a little scary though, because there's no backup.
I know, right? Well, right now, this notebook sitting in my hotel room, terrified right now. It's, you know, a windstorm, a haboob may happen, blow the
Yeah.
pages away. Haboob,
never
that
know.
happens out here.
A heist, like a bank robbery.
Right.
Yeah. I like that.
I'm not saying where I'm staying right now. I'm not going to tell anybody that. So.
Well, I'm interested, and then we can kind of wrap it up. But interested in your list of California films, and do you have a similar list of classic California novels?
Ooh, I have an entire shelf of, like, yeah, I collect, like, my home office has a shelf of California, L.A. California novels for sure. Up there, I'm trying to picture it in my head. It's more Southern California, you know, right? So one of my first books I read that turned me on to crime fiction was by Robert Ferrigno, The Horse Latitudes. This sort of noir, came out in 89, 90, you know. And that I remember reading that and thinking, wow, I was a horror guy. I'm not sure why I picked it up. I thought this looks kind of interesting, you know. And it just turned a switch on in my head, like, oh, this is like horror but real, you know.
He used to. Whatever happened? Do you remember him, John?
Yeah.
NATO, Robert Ferrigno, or Ferrigno, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he had a trilogy a bunch of years ago. He just sort of, I'm not sure
I'm not sure either.
what happened. You know, it's his stuff was really cool. He actually did a really cool set of LA books. It was about a gossip columnist. Remember those books? I'm blanking on the titles. There's also one called The Wake Up. This kind of revenge novel was awesome and very mean spirited, which I appreciate in books. But yeah, I mean, like I do collect all these LA set books. One that blew me away when I first moved to town. It's oh geez, is it Carolyn C. or Lisa? I think Carolyn C. is the mother. She wrote a book called Golden Days, basically about a kind of a family living in Topanga Canyon, and then the bomb drops. It's like nuclear apocalypse, and what happens afterward. I like to cheer myself up when I move somewhere, so I was like, oh, what's that like? You know, a nuke dropping in LA, what would that be like? But it's fascinating. Yeah, this book.
I just read Gary Phillips's upcoming one.
Oh.
That with the crime photographer.
Yes.
In early '60s.
Off of One Shot Harry, yeah.
Off of One Shot Harry, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this one takes place during the Watts riots.
Oh man.
And
Yeah.
really great.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've loved California before I moved there. I would read books to basically spend time there. Yeah, like Walter Mosley, you know, Chandler, of course. Anyone setting a book in L.A., I was gonna, you know, check it out.
Well, and it's funny because, you know, I think Jen, you mentioned the time capsule aspect. You know, you can capture in these classic noir films and even in shows like Dragnet.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful way to see lost old LA.
Yeah.
You know, these great Bunker Hill shots that you see in the background.
You know what I actually loved doing during COVID? I was living in Burbank during COVID, but I couldn't go anywhere. No one else could. We were stuck. I watched old Rockford Files. Yes. It's a great time capsule of LA. It was like seeing LA in the 70s and 80s, early 80s, but, you know, I'm stuck at home. So, yeah, even the shows, they shot everything, you know, in LA. So it's kind of great to see.
Colombo. And
Colombo.
the amazing houses. Yeah. I
Yeah.
fell in love with Colombo during COVID for sure.
So funny.
Yes.
Yeah. That was a weird time. We haven't fully appreciated yet how much it warped us, I think, mentally in those years. But weird rabbit holes, weird things.
Well, Jen, what do you got going on? What are some of your episodes that you've been doing? And
Okay. Well, season 5 is going to be kicking off pretty soon, and I'm very excited. I'm going to have Duane on. I'm going to have Patrick on as well. We're still working out a topic idea. We're thinking Chandler maybe.
Oh,
California
cool,
Union
yeah,
films.
yeah.
Yeah. And the first episode for the new season came out in memory of Tom Wilkinson. And we're also working on one on Francis Ford Coppola's movies in the 80s. John Cusack, as a filmmaker, Duncan Birmingham is calling it quintessential Cusack. So kind of from like Say Anything, Grifters era up through being John Malkovich. We're going to do an episode on Visconti and have a whole bunch of stuff planned.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Better Off Dead.
You know, he didn't choose that. Well,
Isn't that
I'm
isn't
sure
that
we'll
early?
reference it. That is
early
early
Cusack,
Cusack.
yeah.
Yeah. I know.
The house from Better Off Dead, I actually used to walk by it in Burbank. It's funny, the things you see, it's like, oh, that's the Better Off Dead house. It's kind of crazy, these things you see, yeah. Anyway, great movie.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much to both of you guys, to Duane
Thank you both.
and Jen. I really appreciate you coming in
Yeah, thank you.
and doing this. And thanks, everybody, for, let's give them a nice warm welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for watching online. We do have signed copies of Duane's book. So anyway, thanks so much. And we'll break up and have you sign some books for us.
Thank you. Thank you. That was cool. Thank you. Great questions. You did your homework? Oh, geez. Thank you. Of course. Glad you were able to do it, and yes, after years, yeah. That's the weird thing about social media. It's like you know somebody, but it's not. It's this weird. You don't really know them, but you think you do.
I was gonna wait my turn after everybody else, but nobody's
Yep.
coming up yet.
Yeah, hey,
Because
feel
I
free.
have,
Some stuff.
I don't have Wheelman anymore. That's
Ah,
one that somebody
okay.
else read and it never came back to me.
Okay.
But
Off my chair.
the trilogy